All right, up next, we're going to talk some fishing, finally. Captain Brooks Levy of Official Charters is going to join us. And like I said, we have a two-man charter trip. You want to get some raffle tickets right here. We're going to be raffling off one of the prizes is a two-man trip with Official Charters. Brooks, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you started fishing around here? What do you specialize in? What area?
Hey everybody, I'm Captain Brooks Levy of Official Charters. I'm from Slidell. I grew up fishing Lake Pontchartrain, all surrounding areas. I'm stationed out of the Wrigley's right there in Slidell. I fish anywhere from Biloxi Marsh to the Wrigley's, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Bourne. We go over towards Chalmette in the wintertime. Fish for redfish, speckled trout, flounder, black drum, all that kind of stuff.
Well, the obvious question: what are you seeing right now? Are you still in the Wrigley's, or are you coming west any, or are you seeing the trout move, towards the bridges, or are you still stuck in the Wrigley's and Lake Bourne area?
Right now, we're definitely in that transition time. We're gonna start seeing fish on the bridges really soon, I think, as long as the water conditions cooperate. We've been fishing the Wrigley's a lot, staying in that area. The Pearl area has been really good. Like I said, the Wrigley's, Biloxi Marsh is still awesome. So right now you have a lot of different areas where you can choose to go fishing. All of the surrounding areas have really been good right now, just depending on what type of fishing you want to do and what style of fishing you want to do.
What about shrimp? Seeing shrimp?
We are seeing lots of shrimp, lots of bait in the area for sure.
So right now, what are you looking at? The cold front just came through. What are you anticipating in the next week or so?
I think it's just going to get better from here on out. Now, we got our first cold front in, or cool front, It's going to start changing. Like I said, those transition months are coming. It's starting to happen right now. I think we've been seeing more trout. We didn't see lots of trout locally close by in the summertime. Of course, those usual summertime patterns, but the trout are starting to show up locally, so I think it's just going to get better and better.
What about live shrimp? Can we put the live shrimp away, or you think it's time for plastics?
That, if I have clients out, I always get live shrimp just because it's so much easier. A lot of people just don't know how to, work an artificial bait. If it's just myself and some friends who are experienced fishermen, we'll stick to plastic sometimes just for fun. It's more challenging and stuff. And, if you're going for redfish, you can always catch them on spinner baits, gold spoons, chatter baits. If you're going to go fish, ponds and stuff like that, and big bays over in Biloxi Marsh. Dead shrimp's fine for redfish usually. But if you're going after trout, especially in deeper areas like the Wrigley's where you're going to be fishing in 25, 30 feet of water, it's definitely easier to put, 1.5 or 2 ounce chunk of lead on there to weight it down and put a live shrimp on there. Can't go wrong with that.
What kind of boat are you using?
Right now I fish out of a 24-foot Pathfinder.
And as far as for what we're seeing, I said in the next week, what would be your best suggestions for somebody heading out? They want trout. Where would you say to go?
Right now, like I said, it's getting good all over the place. Wrigley's Pass has been really good. They've got a few areas in there where the tide moves through. You can always catch fish. The Pearl area, they've got all different areas up in there where you can catch fish. And I had clients out in Biloxi Marsh this past Saturday. I went over there to catch redfish. They wanted redfish, and we ended up getting on some nice trout too. So I told them to cast towards the bank to catch reds right next to this drain and this big bank we were going to fish. And one of my people cast it out towards the middle, and they pulled in a 16-inch trout. And I told them, keep casting out, And we put like 20 nice trout in the boat. So really anywhere, it just depends on where you want to launch. If you want to get away from the crowd, go over to Biloxi Marsh. but you can catch them locally too. They're definitely starting to show up. The trout are coming in, and they're going to be moving onto the bridge, hopefully.
Anybody have any questions for Captain Brooks Levy? Anything? Okay, I got another question. You seen any flounder yet?
I caught some nice flounder a couple of weeks ago. They haven't really, that flounder run really hasn't started yet. Usually that starts within the next 2 to 3 weeks. But the flounder we did catch, they were really nice. And we've been averaging 2 to 4 nice flounder a trip, but not like it is when the flounder run really happens. And you know, if you go out in the right area, you can put 20 nice flounder in the boat easily. So, right, October and November is awesome months for flounder. So if you want to get on a good flounder bite, that's the time to go for sure.
Any other questions? Anybody? All right, let's give it up for Captain Brooks Levy. Thanks, man. Appreciate you coming out. Appreciate you sharing some advice. Captain Noel BRUMMFIED, and Mr. BRUMMFIED shares a different perspective. He's actually diving underneath the water, so he's going to give us a view of what's down there. From talking to him, I heard that he didn't see much actually over the summer, but that's to be expected. Let Mr. BRUMMFIED tell you about himself and what he does exactly.
Anybody out there know what a troll is? A troll's a monster that lives under a bridge. Now, I don't know about the monster part, but I've lived under that big long bridge for the last 17 years. And I've seen everything there is out there to be under it. I've seen stingrays, I've seen sharks, I've seen speckled trout, redfish, skates, stingrays, everything there is out there. You know what I haven't seen in the last several months? Anything. I dived today on that new spot out there where they're putting up the microwave towers, the cell phone towers. We've got at the bottom down there where they pulled up a bunch of the pilings, we got some 6-foot holes. I figured I'd see fish in that. Nothing. In the last 3 weeks, we've seen about 3 sheep's head. One of my guys today, he popped to the surface. He said, "There's something big, something big." The other guy popped to the surface laughing at him. It was a school of bait fish that were real tight. And he thought the visibility's been about like this, so he thought it was a big fish swimming by. I don't know what to say except maybe it's the fresh water from all this rain that we had, all this stuff that had to come down from Baton Rouge and Livingston Parish. But there's just not any fish, and I would count as many as 40 boats out there fishing under the bridge last year. There's nobody out there fishing today. So, well, it was all year. You know, I dived from the 1st of May till the end of October inspecting the causeway. I'm the only guy you're ever going to meet that swam from the Northshore Lake Pontchartrain to the South Shore underwater. It took 5 years to do it, one set of pilings at a time.
You mentioned 6-foot holes. 6-foot holes, piling holes or concave holes? What are we talking about?
What they did was when they put the forms up to build that new part of the crossover, they put pilings down and they pull those pilings up so the holes are that big around.
Okay. And you sometimes see fish in that?
They've only been there those holes have only been there for a little while, and today I dived on it. That's the only time I've dived on it. I figured I'd see fish in it, but there's nothing there.
I want to know a story of maybe the biggest fish you've seen down there. You're called the biggest fish?
I'm sure the biggest fish are the bull sharks. We see lots and lots of bull sharks, and they've been tagging bull sharks for the last couple of years, and they'll. In following them, you see those yellow floats out there. That's where they're following the fish that they've tagged, and the bull sharks will go from the Wrigley's to Bayou Lacombe and across the lake underneath the bridge, and then back across the lake back to Bayou Lacombe. That's been their normal thing. People always ask me, "Aren't you afraid of those sharks?" Well, so far I've been out there 17 years and none of them bit me yet, so maybe I just don't taste good.
Have they thought about biting you? Just no aggression at all, right?
No, they're curious. One of my favorite stories is Chris Stuckey, who is a boat captain and all that kind of stuff. When I first started, he said, "Did y'all see that tiger? Did you see that tiger shark they caught out there?" I said, tiger shark? They caught the tiger shark? He said, oh yeah, they caught a big tiger shark out there. I said, damn, I've been feeding him those lobsters that I was catching and he wasn't bothering me at all.
All right, another question I have for you. Anything, you mentioned last time, around the pilings, how the barnacles chip off and it forms a hard pad. About how wide is that? And describe, is that just strictly made of barnacles, chipped barnacles?
What happens is around the piling you have what is called scour, and we don't have much scour because there's not a lot of current. The only current we have is tide going back and forth. And what it does, I came to one of these fishing seminars one day and they said that there were holes around the bottom of the piling. Well, that's not anywhere close to the truth. There's a buildup around the bottom of the pilings, and I've seen crabs dig little holes, but that's the only hole that I've seen right there. There's no protection for the fish around the piling. There's no grass down there, there's no foliage, there's no anything down there to protect them. I can stick my hand elbow deep in the mud most anywhere under the causeway.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Brumfield? Nope, that's it. Thank you. You got another one? I'm sorry.
I saw quite a bit of alligator gar out there on the field. Also quite a bit of bull croakers.
I haven't seen any bull croakers at all, and I've seen a few gar, but if I were going to go enter a gar tournament, I'd go to the 9 mile turnaround, because I've seen some of the biggest gar out there. I've caught gar. One of my favorite stories is a jug is going past one day, and I had a kid on the boat who was a diver. He didn't have a clue what was down there. I said, look at that, there's trash in the lake. Why don't you jump in there and get it? He jumped in there and got it, and I got to give it to him because he held on. That fish took him for a ride. That fish laid from one side of my boat to the other when we pulled him in. So there's some big gar out there, but that's where they usually are, around that old turnaround.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Brumfield, I appreciate you coming out and sharing your advice with us. All right, one more reminder, a few times he's done great. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you do and your charter outfit.
I'm Captain Andy Jones. I own Wicked Fishing Charters Mandeville. Mostly in the summer months, we're a little bit different. We fish alligator gar, bull sharks. We do catch quite a few redfish in that time frame as well. We've done pretty good with that with folks from out of state. Really enjoy seeing the different types of species of fish that we have. Then, like everybody else, come fall and spring, we like to chase those trout. So, yeah. So we get one thing in mind, and that's a big causeway trout.
Now, I want to know about the Kraken. I read briefly about the story. Can you share with us that story, the Kraken? K-R-E-C-K-E-N?
K-E-N. That's a little something that my son Tyler and I kind of came up with one day, and I was kind of hoping Noel would go along with it a little bit on his fish stories, because he's seen some monsters out there. But we hooked into to a fish one day. We were out gar fishing and looking for some jacks, and we hooked into a fish that just took us for a ride. And we fought that thing, and we fought it. It was a good, it was 30, 45 minute battle. And all of a sudden the line goes slack right before we get into the boat. We're thinking, oh, it broke the line. We got it up, and the 8-aught hook had actually been snapped in half. And it was a monster. And so that's how the legend of the Kraken started. And we've had a ton of fun with kids with that, and everybody enjoys chasing the Kraken. And when we get spooled or somebody gets taken for a ride, we lose the fish, we kind of, hey, that was the Kraken, he's made his appearance, so we have a lot of fun with it.
Maybe the people that make Finding Bigfoot get you a show, Finding Kraken, huh?
That's right, that's right.
What are you seeing out there as far as trout? I know we don't have the trout on the causeway yet. We talked to Mr. Green. Mr. Green said they're not in the bayou yet. Still looks like they're, we got a report, Daniel and Roger Sissick actually caught a few out of E. Niles, Car Drive Canal, and he threw a cast net and actually caught 30 pounds of shrimp right there. So that's a very good sign. What are you seeing out there as far as trout?
We're in the same boat. We've been looking. We're out looking. We're out yesterday looking. seeing little things that are looking better, little schools. It looks like they're starting to try to go. We ran out to the piles out of Lacombe and some different areas. And, you know, we picked up some trout in Lake Catherine. So I was like kind of excited about that. I was like, okay, they're starting to make their way this way. Getting reports from some buddies that say they're picking them up too. So I'm thinking at least next week you better start looking at the trussels and, you know, Highway 11. You better be looking at those areas pretty quick because it's coming.
As far as now, I talked with Brooks, and he said flounder. You seeing anything? Is that just about what you're seeing with trout? It just haven't sparked it. You know, October seems to be the time that the flounder move into, and you can really put a hurting on the flounder.
You know, we've had the conditions this year have really kind of changed things up. It's just been so hot, and the weather just hasn't cooled off for us. We've had so much fresh water between the spillway, the floods, the rains that we've had. You know, it's kind of changed the dynamics here for us a little bit. So I think everything seems to be pushed back a little bit, but those flounder are going to be there, and same with the sheephead.
Are there any spots, the reefs, what would you suggest? Let's just start with what would you suggest if somebody's looking for trout? Where would you suggest they head out? Let's say this weekend. What
I would do is first thing, you got to check everywhere. You got to check the reefs. You got to check the places that you go. All your haunts that you think, hey, you know, nothing's going on. I don't think so. You got to look, and you may be surprised. I would say all the reefs out of Lacombe, if you're going out of that area, check Bayou Liberty, you know, all that, the trussels, you know, wherever you're fishing in those areas, go to your places that you go and look. Check your bottom finders, look for bait. Check the bayous right now. It's gonna start. We're gonna start pulling some big ones off the shoreline here shortly.
What about shrimp? You seeing anything as far as shrimp? You know, gulls diving, any kind of activity that looks promising?
I was out yesterday and actually saw some pretty good shrimp yesterday, and it actually turned into a bass fishing trip for us. So. You know, when in Rome, you do what the Romans do. When we ended up seeing them popping on top of the water, we switched up gear, and we had a blast catching bass yesterday. And they were eating the shrimp. But the nice thing about that, we had a couple of redfish in there, and you know, I'm thinking the trout are going to be right behind them. So it's coming.
What kind of boat do y'all fish out of with your charters?
We fish a 22-foot Triton Sea Flight.
Any other information you'd like to share? Any questions for Captain Andy? Any questions? Questions? All right. Tell us a little bit about where they can get a hold of you. Are you on your website? I know you got an ad on my site that they can get to.
You can reach us on MandevilleFishingCharters.com. You can reach us on our Facebook. You can call my phone number at 95750-0670. Give us a shout. We really troll the Causeway in November. You know, we start doing that. That's pretty much where we try to stick out there. So if you got any questions about what's going on, feel free to give us a call. We'll share up some information with you.
Thanks so much, Andy. All right, let's give it up for Mr. Andy Jones. People interested in triple tail.
We talked about triple tail.
Trying to make you look good. Give it up for Mike Gallo. Mike, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you. I'm Captain Mike Gallo, owner, operator of Angling Adventures of Louisiana. We've been right on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain over by Salt Bayou since 1999. We have on-site lodging, several boats for large groups. We fish the surrounding area, the Biloxi Marsh down by the wall.
Well, let's get to the good stuff, Mike. What exactly are you seeing?
Well, I heard a couple of the captains mentioning it was transition time, and I think that's a very good way to put it because we are transitioning from summer into winter. And I tell my clients that a lot of time. They're not where they were in the summer and not yet where they're going to be in the winter. But there's another thing to consider, and I'm going to go back in time to the third week of June of 2015. There was a tropical storm named Bill that hit the eastern coast of Texas or the western coast of Louisiana. And it gave us, right here in Lake Pontchartrain, about a 2-foot storm surge. I know because I have to go clean my deck once the water recedes. But what that did was it gave us double-digit salinities in Lake Borgne. Now we know that trout prefer to spawn in salinities of 15 parts per thousand or more. But what a lot of people forget is 1 week after a trout egg hatches, it can tolerate salinities of half that amount. So to me, that's Mother Nature's way of protecting those small fish. They're born in that salty water where there's a lot of teeth, a lot of predators, and they instinctively migrate into that more brackish water where there's not as much, not as many predators can get them. They have a greater chance of survival. So the fish that we're catching right now, a lot of them are just reaching the 12-inch mark. I'm catching 100 a day and I can keep 50. And the ones that I'm not keeping are 11 and a half, 11 and 3/4, keeping a lot of 12s, a lot of 12 and a halves, every once in a while a 14-inch, but that's 1% of your catch. So that transition is going on, as well as I feel the mature trout are still spawning. Tomorrow's the new moon, 30th of September. I feel they'll spawn for the last time on the outside in that high salinity water, and then there'll be that slow migration inward, north, where they like to be in more fresher water when the water temperatures start to decline. A lot of bait in there for them to fatten up on as winter approaches. So you got sort of two transitions going on at one time.
So how much does bait fall into the argument of the transition? Because transition means basically scattered trout. Does bait dictate the reason why they're scattered? Do you understand what I'm saying? Scattered bait, or it's not piled up, or it's too plentiful? I've heard that theory a few times, that everything's spread out.
I'm definitely seeing lots of bait in the marsh, both shrimp, pogies, mullet, and catching trout mostly where there's pogies and shrimp. Not too much on the mullet. I think they're scattered looking for food everywhere they can. I think it's sort of instinctive. We're going to eat everything in sight because it's not going to be here 90 days. It'll be gone.
But why do we see them thicker a month from now than right now, like you described the transition? What dictates that?
You mean speckled trout being thicker? They're going to finish spawning on the outside and start migrating in and join those little ones that have become big enough to harvest. So I feel like the young ones, say a 10-inch trout born in July of 2015. I'm sorry, it gets to be 10 inches July of this year. That's a male. A female will get to be about 12 inches a year later. So my question is, and we still don't have an answer for it, does that trout in July migrate out to saltier water and begin spawning? Or does it just skip a cycle and join the spawners next year when they go out? Either way, it's harvestable for us. We can catch that 12-inch trout and keep it. So they're staggered because they reproduce every 7 to 21 days. A female trout will lay eggs. So you'll have trout spaced out in length based on that, since they grow so quickly, an inch a month. So you could almost say 1/8 of an inch a week. It'll lay it out. So that's why you see them in those staggered patterns. But we have the small, I'm calling them juveniles, because I don't know that they've ever spawned, but they've reached harvestable size. And then, like I said, the ones that are spawning now will start their migration in. Because we're not seeing any big fish, and there's lots of bait, the water's clean. The thing I think is the difference is the salinity. They want that high salinity while they're spawning. As soon as the spawn is over, they could care less what the salinity is. They'll be in pure freshwater.
Now, I know you participate and you're into the tagging procedure that the Louisiana Department of Wildlife Fishery puts on, and I know you think a lot. You think a lot. What makes this happen? What makes that happen? Are you learning anything from the tagging process? That the information that they're gathering, are you putting two and two together in your head of what you're learning? Because I know they're putting out some information as far as where the trout are moving and everything. I just know you pay attention to that. I was wondering if you come across anything that you...
Yeah, of course. We certainly want to look at the tagging information. The biologists at the Wildlife and Fisheries are very good with sharing information. One of the things I did when I first started, way back then, you could call Wildlife and Fisheries and ask for a biological profile on any species that has a limit on it. And those are species they've studied. So redfish, speckled trout, any species that you want. And they'd mail it to you. It might be 200 pages. Now they direct you to the website where you can print this information yourself. But there's a lot of useful information there to get a good start on temperatures, salinities, photo periods, a vast amount of information that you can have a good head start. And then of course you start to put your own theories together. And even myself, even though I fish maybe more than most of us, I still have theories myself. And then you sort of wait and you validate those theories. When we had the spillway opened in January, I was asked, do you think it's going to chase the trout out of the lake? I didn't think it would bother the trout one bit because of the salinity. When they're spawning, they want that high salinity. When they're not spawning, they could care less. Unless the water temperature was going to be extremely cold coming into the lake, then that might move them out. But it didn't. I didn't think it would. We caught trout in Lake Pontchartrain as early as mid-March. So it was a normal springtime for us. Now I've been watching what took place with Hurricane Bill, and that seems to be coming true. So that's a good theory, and they're reaching that harvestable size. As far as the tagging, redfish don't seem to move around near as much as you might think. The trout might move quite a bit more, especially when they are spawning.
Okay, forecast for what we're going to see. Typical, you think we're going to, the river flooding is a thing of the past? You think we're all right, we're in the clear? What do you think is going to happen in the next, let's say, week or so?
I don't think we'll see a great jump in the local area as far as speckled trout in the next week. I'm used to it being more the middle of October. I'm also accustomed to a couple of cold fronts, and you see the shrimp start to move out, and when the trout are coming in where those two cross, you get a really good bite. I still think that'll hold true. I still think without the trout spawning, the freshness of the lake will not bother those trout a bit. I think they'll still come in and feed. It won't be a problem at all. White shrimp are more tolerant of fresh water. So I'm not seeing the shrimpers. I'm not seeing less shrimpers than I normally do this time of year. I'm actually seeing a few more shrimpers than I am this time of year. So it gives me the impression there's more shrimp in the area. We've got the billfish, and we've got the trout coming in from the spawn. I think we're going to have a great fall season. I think we'll have more fish than we're accustomed to. They'll just be mixed in size. More small ones but they'll be keepable. They'll certainly be keepers.
All right, any questions for Captain Mike? Got him right here. Any questions?
Sam, what's your question?
Billfish. What are you talking about, billfish?
I call them billfish because they were born during Hurricane Bill. Thank you, Sam. Sam Barbera back there, ladies and gentlemen.
Any other questions? Right here. What do you got?
I don't know where the billfish are.
What you said is going to hold true about the size of the trout. I just wonder, do you think that the Causeway is going to be as good this year as it was last year?
Causeway question.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a good source for information about the Causeway. I fish it once a year with Sam. Other than that, it's just too far away for me to go to. I mean, it really is. Yeah, I could lie to you, but I'd prefer not to. I think our bridges on the east side are going to be fine in the fall, you know, once we get to second half of October and into November. But as far as the Causeway, I got nothing.
You said about the spillway just proved true for us over here. You're exactly right. We stayed on the bike the whole time, even though they had the fresh water.
Yeah, one thing, fresh water is not as dense as salt water. So you'll have a layer of salt water on the bottom. And being I speak with Ashley Ferguson with the Wildlife and Fisheries whenever I have questions, she's one of the biologists that I talk to. She had dove in Lake Pontchartrain soon after they opened the spillway. And there was 8 feet of muddy water and then 2 feet of real clean water underneath. The trout that we were catching had a lot of sores on their bellies, which gave us the impression they were sitting on the bottom, staying in that salt water as much as they could. And it's not necessary for them to be there. I think they're more accustomed to the bait that's in that water, because what they're feeding on may need to stay in more salty water. And when I say salty, I'm still only talking about 5 parts per thousand, not a lot of salinity. Good question.
Any other questions for Mike Gallo? All right, Mike. Thanks so much. Give it up for Mike. All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Let's hear from all of our guests. We certainly appreciate them coming out, sharing their knowledge. They don't have to do this for us. Make a great event. I want to thank